Welcome back to the PeopleNova Podcast. I'm Rachel O'Neill. I thoroughly enjoyed today's discussion exploring my favorite approach to shifting mindsets with clients. Reframe from depleting resources to investing capital. Humans are the most important capital supporting your business, hence human capital. Regenerative businesses invest in its human capital, distribute power when making decisions, and intentionally incorporate stakeholder voices. Sounds like the kind of business you want to be a part of, huh? I totally agree. Let's listen to the discussion with Aliana Pineiro to figure out how to create the type of business that regenerates the economy. Hey, Aliana.
Hi, Rachel. Nice to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. Aliana, do you want to do a quick introduction for our audience? Let folks know who you are and how you're amazing.
Thanks. Sure. My name is Aliana Pineiro, and I am the Impact Director at Boston Impact Initiative. I have experience in impact investing, social enterprise, finance, and it's sort of all melded together to, appear in this position at Boston Impact Initiative a couple years ago. Just sort of appeared in my lap and really turned out to be a perfect fit for me. So I work with companies in our portfolio to drive their impact and really create an economic justice impact in Boston.
Awesome. I love Boston Impact Initiative. It's definitely one of the organizations on my radar of like, oh my gosh, all the good juju in the world. How do we amplify? And that's why you're here, because we want to know, how do we help?
Awesome.
When you hear the phrase, humans do business with other humans, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think for me, that is really the essence of the work that we do. We're a very non-traditional lender. We don't have an application form. We don't use credit scores. We're very much, creating relationships. And it's a relationship-based lending program. And I think we also expect that our entrepreneurs in our portfolio are thinking about their workers as people that they are in relationship with, as other enterprises and other community groups, people they are and organizations they are in relationship with. So really, that human to human element is so important to us and really drives the way that we do our work.
Love it. I love it. Exactly why you're on the podcast. How did that in priority get set and manifest and because not a lot of other impact firms prioritize that. They prioritize 10x returns and revenue returns and bottom line. And I know that entrepreneurs grapple with that.
Right. Well, I think we're serving a slightly different demographic. We're really not a VC funder, a venture capital funder. We're not looking to create a portfolio of 10 companies, one of which will be a unicorn and, make all the money and all of the rest can fail and we don't care. Mm-hmm. Our thesis is that we are looking to invest integrated capital. So equity, debt, some grants into regenerative businesses in communities of color that will help restore the productive capacity in those communities. And so all of that is very relational, right? It's all about the relationship with the community, with the environment, with the workers, with each other, lender to and investor to organization. And so that, it was really built into the DNA of the organization. And I think everyone who has come on to the team and passed through the organization really has embodied that as one of the priorities and the way that we view our work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, non-traditional VC, love it, right? We need to think about supporting businesses in a non-traditional way. And it's interesting because what I feel like is a lot of table talk about, relationships are important and, team dynamics are important. But every time I ask, investors and supporters of businesses, okay, what specifically do you do? How do you support that? What, concretely does that mean? It's a lot of hand wavy, oh yeah, it's important. Okay.
I can say that it's definitely much more than hand waving and kind of posturing for us. Even in the way that we evaluate the companies that are in our pipeline. So, we're an investor. We do a due diligence process. We look at the financials of the business, we look at the business model, we're also looking at the impact side. And so we're looking at the social, the community kind of relationships, the economic justice piece that this enterprise might bring to the community and also to our portfolio. And so that is something that we evaluate early on. We communicate with the enterprise early on, and we're really looking at how is power distributed within the organization, and we rate that. So if it's a worker co-op, power is more democratically distributed, and that's favorable for them to get financing for us, even though that's not really a financial metric that will influence the financing decision.
Yeah.
Another might be the way that they treat their workers. So can workers own equity, or eventually, or do they share in the profits? Is there open book management? So do you open your accounting and your books to your workers so that they understand what's going on? Those are all things that are, again, kind of get quote extra points in our due diligence process. And I'd say you talk to people who are really just focused on finance. They're trying to figure out how can they squeeze out every ounce of efficiency and work out of workers and out of resources. And we really look at it with the totally opposite lens of regeneration, of support, of confluence of factors that really build up the community rather than just extract.
Yeah.
So that is, and again, it's built into our investment process, and it is both rigorous and feels really good.
Yeah. Oh, it must. We've chatted in the past. I'm like, oh my gosh, Aliana, you're like, you must have I know for me, it'd be a dream job, right? To work really closely and to help. There are a couple of touch points that you touched on, but two that I want to go back to. You talk about not squeezing every ounce out of a resource, right? And I have shifted in my work. It used to be called human resources. At least I call it human capital, because resources are depleted like coal and energy, whereas capital is invested and hopefully can increase, right? Which signals some of that shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say, for us, we're really thinking about our work as connected to all the other aspects of life around us. Not to get too hokey, but, when you really think about how we as people and enterprises and, beings exist in this world, we cannot continue to extract to the maximum, because that's how we're in the crisis that we're in. That's how we're in the climate crisis that we're in. That's how we're in the inequality crisis, the inequality of wealth, of education, of health access. All of that has to do with the capitalist system of extraction. Now, obviously, we're investors. We're not completely poo-pooing capitalism per se, but we are looking at how can we do this in a restorative way rather than in that extractive way. Extraction has gotten us basically to a dead end street, and we better turn around.
Yeah. Hey folks, writing's on the wall. This is where we are. Extractive is not healthy. So let's try something different. I was chatting with another guest on the podcast, and I've retrained my neural pathways, and the way that I reframe mistakes, or like, oh, this isn't working, right? I tell myself, okay, all right, just try a different way. Like square peg in the round hole, like, oh, this isn't working. Okay, just try a different way. Like no fault, no blame. Just like, hey, maybe there's another way. Right?
Yeah. And I think that really, I think going back to the investment practice at BII, that makes me think about how, we're really allowed to, and not allowed, we give ourselves the freedom, and we're given the freedom by our board, our investment committee, to think about structures that really fit the entrepreneur, and we keep the entrepreneur and the business at the center of the work that we do. So rather than saying like, here's your 3-year term loan, with 5% interest, start paying me next month, we think about, how does your cash move throughout your business? When do you have your busy seasons? When do you have your low seasons? Are you a small business that's gotten a giant contract and you just need financing for this one big contract? And so really right sizing and working with the entrepreneur so that they are comfortable taking on the investment that they're getting. Or if it's equity, rather than just straight, hey, we're going to buy 20% of your company and just hang out forever and have a vote on your board. And, and we didn't do any work. We just had some money to put in your company at the right time. Actually, we are going to figure out a timeline to figure out when we can get out. And that's going to get paid back by revenues starting in year X. And we will get paid back, and that ownership will go back to you, or maybe it gets transferred to the workers or to community members so that they become owners of the company. So just really being able to think creatively and outside the box, where can this round peg go? This round peg is this enterprise, right? Like, it does not fit in the square hole of regular bank loans or CDFI loans. Come to BII. We will fit to mold whatever you need.
Hey man, we'll create your own hole to stick that peg in.
Exactly. You're running with that metaphor.
Love it. One of the earlier points, the second point that I wanted to touch back on from a minute ago is about power dynamics, one of my favorite topics. So how do you identify that? I know it's in the criteria, but then also, like, is there any coaching or like, hey, try another way? Have you thought about, such? And in a recent newsletter I shared with my audience is the concept of participatory leadership. I don't know if that resonates with you or helps with that power dynamic.
Yeah. So it is something that we've paid attention to for a while now, really since the beginning, being interested in worker-owned co-ops and other types of cooperative models or power sharing models. I think we've gotten a bit more sophisticated now. We just recently added a new board member who is Nia Evans of the Ujima Project.
Oh yeah.
And she knows a lot about community power and how to bring that in. And so while it is something that has been in our work for a long time now, she has really added to the rigor and is helping us ask the right questions and guiding us. So for example, we have one investment that we're looking at, and our reservations about the investment, the impact reservations, really lie at the governance level. Who's on your board? What is the community that you serve, and who is on your board, and how that does or does not reflect. And I think board positions, especially at nonprofits where we also invest in nonprofits, board positions are kind of a badge of pride for people, right? And they, especially of successful nonprofits, and they like doing the work, and people don't want term limits. People don't want to bring people that are outside of their regular kind of board social groups, or the kind of the normal circuit of board, that normal type of board members. So really, when we said to them, hey, we're interested in this investment, one thing that we would be interested in seeing is you thinking about how, and we can help you think about how you recruit or include community voice, perhaps community board members, or creating a community committee that reports to the board or provides insights to the board. So really thinking about at the governance level, how is that organization reflecting the groups that it's serving, and really doing it, not in a tokenism type of way, but like in a real integrated way where those board members are empowered to help lead the organization. And so that's an example of something that we've been in discussion with one of our pipeline companies.
So crucially important. I serve on the board of a 501c3 not-for-profit, not invested or not supported by BII, so totally separate and independent. But that what you just described has been a fundamental, like, driving factor for me. I was chair of the board for 3 out of my 4 years of service. I'm now just today ending my service, so I'm handing over, but I've led the nominating committee, right? So I have done this board recruitment with an eye towards who's our community that we're serving, how are we representing those voices, right, that align with our strategic pillars, so that we can make sure that we are actively listening as we're actively making decisions about the future of the organization that's going through a huge relocation. So it's going to be in a new community, which is an even better opportunity to do that clean slate. Like, great, we're in a new community. How do we listen better? How do we make sure that those voices are heard? So totally not planned, but yes, I live that as well.
Yeah. And I think, what you're saying about that community is really important. I think for us, it isn't just, and I mentioned tokenism before, but it isn't just, oh, okay, you serve Latinx kids or families in, Lynn, like you should have 3 Latinos on your board, like, but they're from elsewhere, or they didn't grow up in Lynn, or they are like from a different, they're from like sort of a professional class, and Lynn might be more working class.
Yeah.
I think there's, and not to sort of create divisions, but there, no group, no demographic, women are not a monolith, Latinos are not a monolith. And so really when you're working in a community, it is really important to think about how does this board, or how does this governance, or how does this staff, how are we informed by the community that we work in directly?
Yeah.
And it's not always, it doesn't always have to be that there is actual representation of, back to my example, a mom from Lynn because her kids are in this program, but, how do you incorporate voice? And there can be so many different ways to do that.
Yeah,
To listen,
absolutely.
as you said.
Listen, actively listen for understanding, not to respond, right? Like we're taught it, I don't know, humans are taught, at some point, this communication pattern of, I'm going to listen only to prove my point, right? I don't know if it's debate class or like what, but no, sometimes there is no response. It's just listening.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Sometimes uncomfortable with that silence. Oh, they're not saying anything. Are they mad? Maybe they're just listening.
Yeah. I think it's something that we, I've spent time outside of the country. I worked down in Ecuador for several years, and I worked with indigenous farmers in the Amazon, and they were way comfortable with silence. Let me tell you, you would ask them a question at a meeting, and it was very participatory. Everybody would come, everybody would vote, bring your babies, bring your grandma, everyone.
Yikes.
And we would sit there and ask them a question, or be, in discussion, and they would just sit there and look at us for like minutes, not 15 seconds. And you had to get used to that. And as I was being trained into this position, they were like, get used to really long silences. They sit there and they think about what they, want to share with you. They also expect you to listen in that way and not constantly respond.
Oof.
Right. And so I think that's also been helpful. Just, it's, just a cultural tradition there, or something that's sort of the norm there, but in our society and here, there's always needs to be a response and always a reaction, as you said. And learning to listen is super important.
The introvert in me is like joyful. I'm like, oh my God, you mean I get to like process my answer before like blurting?
You don't need to blurt.
Do not insert mouth, like hold on, or insert foot into mouth. Yeah. Oh my God, that's awesome. God, I had a thought. I wanted just to go back to something I forgot now. One of the things that we like to ask our guest is, what's a milestone for you, personally, professionally? We like to put good juju into the universe, and who knows, maybe one of our listeners is like, oh my gosh, I need to follow up with Aliana.
Sure. So future milestone, like what are we looking forward to? Yeah, I think for BII and for my work at BII, we have capital to deploy. We have money to deploy, and we want to be making investments, whether they be loans, equity investments, again, all those different types of creative structures that we can do into BIPOC businesses that are regenerative, social enterprises, nonprofits, co-ops, and we can really be flexible about how those investments are structured. So we can do revenue-based financing. Again, you pay, as a percentage of your revenue. So if your cash is lumpy, your sales are lumpy, we can do that. If you do, other types, if you have a big order that you need to fill and you need financing for that, those types of things. Again, like we want to be here standing in the gap and supporting businesses that, especially that traditional finance really doesn't serve.
Mhm.
And so we've been trying to get the word out there that, we are here, we have money to deploy, we want to talk to people. And again, we're so relationship based that we will take a conversation with literally anyone. There's no form to fill out. There's just, send me an email and let's set up a time to talk.
Nice. When you keep saying you're like, oh, we want to get the word out, y'all aren't new though. You've been around for a while.
We've been around. We started back in 2013. There was a pilot fund of $3 million that basically did about 30 investments and tested all, again, doing this very flexible financing, all these different structures, integrated capital, follow-on capital, all different types of organizations, and to prove, that this could work, that we could invest to create wealth in communities of color, to attempt to close the racial wealth gap, which is so wide in Boston. In 2017, we started a fund. So the entity before was an LLC, that was the structure. Now we started a charitable loan fund. So we're a nonprofit, started a charitable loan fund. And so we have outside note holders, high net worth individuals, also community members, churches and synagogues, hospitals, institutions, around the Boston area have invested into our fund. We've raised about $7 million, and we've, we're kind of in the middle of deployment at this point. We've been deploying since 2017. Nice.
And this kind of idea and this concept came together 2013, probably prior to 2013. When, just trying to put the chronology together, when was the research from the Boston Fed about the net worth of Black families in Boston?
That was in 2015. And
so,
right. So that research showed that white families in the Boston area had a median wealth of $248,000, I believe. And Black families had a median wealth of $8. So that's, both debts and assets wealth. And, I think that's a product of redlining in the Boston area. That's a product of, the 2008 housing crisis as well. And the businesses that were lost at that time, especially the minority owned businesses that were lost at that time. And I think now we're facing a similar crisis during COVID, where, Black and brown owned businesses, they might not survive. And we've heard all kinds of scary statistics that like up to 50% of minority owned businesses are at risk of closing by the end of the year.
Yeah. I see that news and I hear that and I'm like, I know that Beckma is doing a lot, Ujima is doing a lot to amplify Latinx is doing a lot to like put, I'm working with an entrepreneur in Optima, I need to teach for Optima. I'm working with an entrepreneur and he's like, oh yeah, I did a side project and I like listed, like I created a spreadsheet of all these Black and Latinx businesses. And I'm like, okay, how do we integrate that with all the others that are going on?
I think what's been great is that there's been a lot of cross kind of partnerships and coalitions and things that have popped up around COVID. And so would love to get that person plugged in. They should come to the Amplify Latinx Power Up 3.0 Business Summit on November 12th. I'm on the planning committee of that. And
I get the newsletter, so I will pass that on. Thank you to this entrepreneur.
Yeah. But I think there's been a lot of, because of the emergency that exists around minority owned businesses right now, and the access to federal funds that was more difficult for smaller businesses, for women owned businesses, and for minority owned businesses, which came out in that Mass Inc. poll late in the summer. There was a great survey that they did and showed that data, that people in those groups really weren't getting the right support.
Right. The intended recipient was not the actual recipient.
Right. And I think part of that was because what we view as the intended recipient, right? And so maybe, the Ruby Tuesdays or Cheesecake Factory or Kanye West didn't need PPP money, right? But otherwise, there wasn't any sort of lens put on that for those federal funds. And not to say, that one small business over another should get it, but let's make sure that Spanish speaking or Mandarin speaking small businesses have the same access to that money. Because those entrepreneurs are just as much at risk as English speaking, or more, as English speaking entrepreneurs.
I totally agree. Right. And I have a question, and this kind of dances on like the pros and cons of check this box if you are in this target demographic, right? Which pros and cons to both sides of the conversation, right? Like some groups want to know, and other groups are on the side of, I don't fit in a box. Don't make me check a box, right? So let's talk about that. How do we help create a framework that isn't a colonial construct that still distributes this to potentially, the intended recipient?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, we're in that system. And so we sort of have to, and it's arcane and it is uncomfortable and it ends up leaving people out or including people that maybe don't quite need it the way that others do, So, I mean, I would say, like, for me, I would say, like, check all the boxes you can. If you're a woman, check that box, like, and get certified. And if you're a minority owned business, like, check that box and get certified, because, if you've never had a hard time before, congratulations, that's great. And this might help. And if you had, hopefully this helps. And I just think that, for those that might feel like, their privilege, which they might not view it as privilege, or hard work, privilege, whatever you want to call it, but that their hard work combined with privilege is being threatened. Just understand that there's still PPP money out there that hasn't been used. I mean, this is an example of federal funds that just has not even been used. So if you would be upset if someone checks a box because they're Latin or Black and they get a little bit of extra help with their, application or whatever, there's still money to go around. And so, that's that. And I also think, that we do better when everyone does better. Like if minority owned businesses on your main street, just when you walk out the door and walk down the street, or when you look at, your phone, your apps to order some food, I mean, who's going to bring you dinner? What hardware store are you going to go to? Like, what flower shop are you going to go to? Those stores will not be there. We have, this is part of the fabric of our neighborhoods. And it's so important. And we have to support those businesses because they will be gone.
They will be. Yeah, no. And that, it compounds it so much. I want to circle back the point that, I think I heard, and so clarify for me, is this scarcity model, right? Of the privilege and the hard work of, if you get it, then I don't, which is not true, right? And like,
right. Yeah. So I think there's like two levels of that model, right? Like, I think when you think about Jeff Bezos, like, yeah, he'd be less rich if he paid his workers more and thought more and was less extractive. And like, I saw on Twitter, he like started, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, he started a new school for people who can't afford school. It's like, oh, that's nice, because now and I'm sure everybody saw these memes of like, now, the children of your workers can go to the school because you don't pay them enough to pay for school, for, childcare, daycare. So his solution is not actually the solution. The solution is he takes less. And that is a zero-sum game. That is, Jeff Bezos needs to make less money. Like, that's my position, and many others. I think when you think of resources like the PPP funds or, other types of resources like that really kind of weren't administered well. It was very much first come, first serve. It had to do with who had relationships at banks. It had to do with, and then the banks that were prioritizing the larger loans because they made a marginally higher amount on distributing those loans than the tiny loans. And so they prioritized the bigger businesses first. That doesn't make sense. And that's not, one, it's not fair. But two, it doesn't even make sense because there's still money to go. So I think like it's different, right? There's different resources, and I think there's different models that, not every model is going to, not every situation is going to really point to there's enough pie for everyone. And I like embrace that and accept that. And like, sometimes you're going to get a slightly smaller piece of pie, but damn it, Jeff Bezos, skip dessert. Like you can skip dessert.
Yeah.
And others like, and I'm not only talking about him. I think that
other high net worth individuals.
Yeah. High net worth individuals, like think about how, if you're a business owner, like think about how the people in your company might be faring. Great. If they have their job still, does their spouse have their job? Did their mom move in with them? And like, maybe that's not your problem, but it's your worker's problem.
Right.
And I think if you think about it, going back to that very relational, connected, community-oriented view of business, it is your problem. And so I think that there's aspects of that people can take and think about. And I think the other piece, I have a contact here in Boston who recently challenged everyone to shift $1,000 of their spending to Black-owned businesses.
Great.
And he said, I'll do a consultation with you. I'll help you think about, what businesses these are. And I think that's, it's also small actions like that. Obviously, at the policy level, we need to prioritize these businesses at the government level, at the federal aid level, at the banking level.
Yeah.
But also, who do I order from? Do I always order from Amazon?
Love it.
Do I, and like who are you choosing, for even, your like professionals in your life, your doctor or your masseuse or your person who,
florist.
Cuts your hair,
florist example. Yeah.
Example,
right.
your baker.
Yeah.
That's money that, that can go towards businesses that really need that support, towards minority owned businesses that need that support.
Yes. The Amazon addiction, like, okay, like have a minute and think before you click. I know it's so easy, right? But like have a think, like, what are your needs, right? And can you get those needs from the local hardware store, right? And do you need it in one day? Like, is it really that level of a crisis that you need it tomorrow? I don't know. When the toilet's not working, maybe you do. But like light bulbs and like, I don't know, cabinet hardware, whatever. I'm pretty intentional about shopping local when I can. And when I talk with clients about supporting, what true allyship means in this, moment of racial equity and justice, it's the florist, it's the care packages. Like, don't just click for the big national brand to like handle it. Like, those are deliberate choices where you can support a local baker.
Right. Yeah, I just got an announcement, two former portfolio companies, Fresh Fruit Generation and Sweet Teas, have
I love
together.
Sweet Teas. I coached her.
Oh yeah, Teresa Maynard. Yes.
Yeah.
Love her. They've put together this election night packet. I don't know if you've seen, it's like a bundle of like basically ordering out. So you get like food from Fresh Food Generation and cupcakes, like themed cupcakes, Kamala Harris cupcakes.
I love it.
Biden 2020 cupcake, RBG cupcakes. So super, super sweet. And, instead of ordering,
the same old takeout. Yeah.
Maybe you can support these local businesses that are really focused on economic justice.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I love it. I did not see that election night package, but I'm going to go check it out. It'll be a little bit too late for our listeners.
Yeah. I thought of that as I was saying it, but they have Sweet Teas. I will say, we have a whole list of items. I'm going to put it up on our website of, places that organizations I'm going to put it up on our website. We have a whole list of businesses that people should be shopping from that are local for gift giving or for food, ordering food, at like around the holidays or just on a regular night. So I'm going to put that up on our website in the news section, and people can go and visit that and support our portfolio companies. Great.
Yeah. And I also I know we're talking about like gifts and like food because those are tangible and those are real, but But I also coach clients on the like, who do you have your 401k with? Like, who's your insurance broker?
Mm-hmm.
Those are business. Who do you bank with? Let's talk about your banking relationship.
Yeah.
Those are intentional decisions that businesses can also make.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. We actually recently were thinking about who we were going to be banking with at BII. We had there was a decision point, and I think it is hard to make those decisions, even as a social justice organization. We know we don't want to be with the banks that have, either now or in the past have been invested in private prisons, gun manufacturers, oil companies, etc. But from there's actually a lot of choice, and kind of the degree of kind of more institutionalized, very banky banks, that still have that social justice aspect, like Eastern Bank, for example. Or you can go like Way Credit Union, or Black owned bank, and get a slightly different experience and slightly different product, which is also great. So
yeah, I moved my business and personal to Eastern Bank. Absolutely.
Yes.
But I love the intentionality and the values alignment, right? So our entrepreneurs that are listening, like, this is the intentionality of, do I live my values, right? Is what I'm intending to do aligning with what I'm actually doing? And what are those criterias, right? Like, you listed a couple of criterias. You're like, oh, we're not going to support banks that do prison funding. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. But like, that's something that, every individual, right, needs to do that self-work, that self-introspection to figure out what are those criterias. Like, if you were to see this on the front page, how would you feel about that? Right.
Right. And it is hard to do. I don't want to, be flippant and just say like, why is anybody banking at Bank of America because, of that. Or, but it is hard work to do. And even just moving, like I used to Bank of America, and I had to move, you change all your direct deposit and
it's easy just to stay with it.
Yeah.
Like, moving your banking is so hard. I know.
So
like,
hard.
I've done it, you've done it, we know it.
And like doing the research of like where you need to go, that can be quite difficult. Or like your 401k, there are not a lot of options for full ESG 401k, ESG being environmental, social, and governance, investing criteria. So not quite impact investing, but even just thinking about those governance, social, and environmental aspects and externalities, in those mutual funds that you might be invested in through your 401k. There's not that many organizations that have robust offerings that are that are fully integrated to your 401k choices. You might not have those choices where you work. So
right.
So it, I won't say that it's easy, but I'd say that it's, choose an area, work on that piece, and then choose another area, work on that piece. So, once you have the like kind of consumer facing piece down, you switched your banker, you're not just buying your flowers at Whole Foods anymore. You got, your takeout down. Okay. So let's think about banking. Okay. Now let's think about 401k. So, I think, you and I have been probably doing this work for longer than maybe some other people who just started thinking about it this summer, with the uprisings and sort of this awakening, that especially a kind of white awakening to the racial injustice and ways that people themselves can be good allies and can really contribute to the cause. And so, take it little by little. It's worth doing, and take it little by little.
It is absolutely worth doing. It makes a difference every tiny step, right? And it's not like a surgical implant, right? It's like a gradual, like, lifestyle change, right?
Exactly.
Is we need to make these small adjustments, intentional adjustments, and communicate and support, right? Like, I tell my white friends, hey, I chose this bank on purpose. This is why I chose this, right? I've pretty much harmonized my Facebook post and my LinkedIn post at this point. I'm like, I'm one person, like, this is what I believe in. And if you have questions, I've a majority white friends, right? If you have questions, I don't have all the answers, but man, I'll talk about it.
Yeah. open for a conversation. Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh my gosh, this is great. So my favorite question, open question, not a hard one, I promise. I love to ask all of my guests, what is your favorite art?
Oh.
And it could be any medium, modality. This is where I learn so much and I love it. And it really motivates from a quote from Darren Walker, the CEO of the Ford Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
He says, without art, there's no empathy. And without empathy, there's no justice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, there's a lot of art in the world.
There is. And my favorite art is dance. I love to dance. My sister is a dancer. I have a sister who's 2 years younger than me. She recently started a nonprofit in Boston and using like hip hop and dance to work with young people in Boston. But really any type of dance. I grew up in Boston and was in the city dance program for a couple of years. So the Boston Ballet had this program where they would pick up, inner city kids and, just in case they could find a star in the mid 90s in Boston. And so I would go to the Boston Ballet and take lessons, and they also gave us free so it was free lessons, and then they would give us free tickets to every show because they wanted us to be sort of steeped in ballet culture.
Love it.
And so we would go, my mom and I would go to every Boston Ballet production for 2 years when I was in 4th and 5th grade. And so I love ballet. I've always loved ballet. Just love all different types of dance. I think that expression through movement is so powerful, and the integration with music is so powerful, and the movement in groups or with a partner, just all of this I think is very relational, is very kind of interactive. There's a lot of culture involved as well. And those are all things that really fascinate and inspire me, culture, relationships, kind of the group dynamic of anything, but especially a dance, but of an organization or
good. I'm glad you went there. Yeah,
of a company. So dance is my favorite medium to watch, to do, to be a part of.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, I can definitely see how that the collective group dancing, right? And how that can parlay into organizations, right? Groups of humans doing this beautiful orchestra to make cupcakes or to bank or, other examples, fresh food generation, right? To make this wonderful thing, this orchestra of people need to move and coordinate. That's awesome.
Yes. That is a great interview question. It is. Because you learn a lot about someone. It's personal. I might use that as a check-in question at our next staff meeting.
Go ahead.
I'll give you credit.
Go ahead. There's great enough sunshine. There's enough art in the world for everyone to find something that resonates with them, right? Because a lot of my work is understanding empathy for other humans, right? And especially when we talk about power distribution, right? And not being the pinnacle and typically the white man on top making the decisions. Let's try a different way. What could that look like, right? Let's try a different way. Let's stir up and let's acknowledge those emotions. And maybe those emotions are oh, panic. What if I'm not in charge? What if I don't get my way? Okay. Well, let's get a lot to unpack here.
Right.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Aliana, thank you so much for your time. We definitely appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners have enjoyed. I know I have. So
thank you very much for inviting me, Rachel. It's been a true pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks, Aliana. Thank you for joining us on the PeopleNova Podcast. My name is Rachel O'Neill. The team here at PeopleNova Human Capital would love to hear from you. We are always curious to hear from our listeners. So go ahead and send us an email, podcast@peoplenovahc.com, with your workplace questions or suggestions for who you'd like to see on our show. If you send us an audio memo, we may include your question on the show. Lastly, we are here to amplify. Our guests are amazing entrepreneurs, and we want you to forward our newsletter to someone in your network who needs to know the amazing things our guests are doing, so together we can make an impact. Thank you so much. Take care, and we will see you next time.